Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Review Radio. Yes, you heard right. We are the show that reviews every paranormal topic you've been wanting to discuss, but never been able to find an outlet for. Your Friday nights won't be the same. Are you ready for the paranormal? I'm Anthony Agati, broadcasting in New York.
And I'm Luci Liebfried, broadcasting from Chicago. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Paranormal Friday night. As always, our phone lines are open, so give us a call. The number to call is 661-244-9831. Now, if you wish to talk to us, press 1 after calling the number. And if you wish to just listen to the show on your phone, press 2. We have our chat room up and running, so feel free to ask us a question or stir up a debate in the room. We are here for the next 2 hours, so settle in and be prepared to get deeper into the paranormal than you ever have before. Anthony, let's start tonight's show.
We of the church believe that all men of whatever race, color, or creed were created with equal rights, that all men have inalienable rights to their own religious practices and their performance, that all men have inalienable rights to their own lives, that all men have inalienable rights to their sanity, that all men have inalienable rights to their own defense, that all men have inalienable rights to conceive, choose, assist, or support their own organizations, churches, and governments, that all men have inalienable rights to think freely, to talk freely, to write freely their own opinions, and to counter or utter or write upon the opinions of others, that all men have inalienable rights to the creation of their own kind, that the souls of men have the rights of men, that the study of the mind and the healing of mentally caused ills should not be alienated from religion or condoned in non-religious fields, and that no agency less than God has the power to suspend or set aside these rights overtly or covertly. And we of the church believe that man is basically good, that he is seeking to survive, that his survival depends upon himself and upon his fellows and his attainment of brotherhood with the universe. And we of the church believe that the laws of God forbid man to destroy his own kind, to destroy the sanity of another, to destroy or enslave another's soul, to destroy or reduce the survival of one's companions or one's groups. And we of the church believe that the spirit can be saved, and that the spirit alone may have saved or heal the body. What I just read to you is the basic and fundamental creed of the Church of Scientology. It may all sound good and wholesome, but more and more people are coming forward to share how they have been tortured and abused by the organization that claims to be a church and claim to be for its members. Does Scientology really proclaim inalienable rights to its members' lives? Do they truly act upon its members to preserve and uplift sanity? And do they honestly place the right in its members for their own defense? Well, our guest tonight, I believe, would emphatically deny these claims and has written a book that, believe me, is a difficult book to believe, but it's actually 100% true. Nancy Manny is an ex-Scientologist who has been inside Scientology for over 23 years. She was actually in Scientology for over 23 years. She has had many jobs in the organization, including being a spy in the espionage division and head of the Celebrity Center, where she helped recruit celebrities in Hollywood, as well as working alongside L. Ron Hubbard himself. Her book, My Billion-Year Contract, Memoir of a Former Scientologist, shares Nancy's life in the cult, which led her to escape and have a psychotic breakdown from the group. It's a fascinating and disturbing story, and Luci and I are excited to be able to talk with Nancy tonight. So please welcome Nancy Manny to the show. Hello, Nancy. How are you tonight?
Hi, guys. I'm very happy to be on this show, especially with all the various news situations that are floating around there.
Absolutely.
It's, Katie, I got to give it to her. She did it, and she did it right. Did it absolutely right.
Well, Nancy, I want to welcome you to the show. And I'd like to start with the obvious question. How did you get into Scientology?
The basic, I want to speak on this on two levels. There's me personally, and then there's in general. How does Scientology recruit new people, including celebrities? Because it's the same mechanism, whether it's a regular person or a celebrity, a billionaire or a young single mother. What they do is they work on people. They try and communicate to them when they're at their most vulnerable. That means you might have a friend who's a Scientologist, but they don't work to introduce you to Scientology until your wife leaves you, or until your child is recovering from a bad accident and you're pretty shaken up. Oftentimes that friend is what's called a field staff member of Scientology, and he is actually a part of the sales team, although you won't know that until later. As part of the sales team, if you do come in and start buying services and you start buying books and whatnot, that person will get a commission, 10% or 15% of whatever you pay for. Now, this comes back to my introduction, which was that this was not a church. I was a lapsed Catholic, but I still was a Christian at heart and probably going back to the Catholic Church. But I was advised and shown issues that this was not a church. It was like a self-help business. And Hubbard even said that the religious views are only for accountants and lawyers. So that was my big barrier to joining. What you read in the very beginning about make the world a better place and all men have inalienable rights to speak and all that, I listened to that. I've read it before. That's part of why I joined. I think all those things are very, very important. Personally, I was at a rough time. I was a teenager still, and I was in college to be training to be a social worker, but the program I was in fell apart. I'd just broken up with a long-term boyfriend. I was tired of the drugs that were all around me in colleges, and so I was what people call, I had a ruin. I was at that point in my awareness. I was like, oh, everything is so bad, there's no hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the basic thing that Scientology works on to gather people in. If you're in contact with a Scientologist and everything's going fine, they'll just be your friend. And they'll be your friend until you slip on a banana peel. And when you do slip on that banana peel, that's when they'll say, hey, you want to talk to somebody down here at the Scientology Center? Being completely unaware that your friend has set this up beforehand with the person at Celebrity Center. And the person at Celebrity Center pretty much knows your entire life story before you even walk in.
Wow. Now, Nancy, I read in your book, My Billion-Year Contract, that you were in sales and you basically sold the courses to the members, and that you actually wrote the Big League Sales course and how they trained you to be desensitized to money. So what does this entail? And obviously, what's the reason for this?
Because it was a sales organization, and the course that I took in sales was actually, it was a good sales book. It was a good sales training program for selling, and that again fit right into the line of, I'm not in a church. I'm selling self-help courses and things.
Mm-hmm.
You when I first came in, I thought $100 was a lot of money. After that training, $10,000 wasn't even a lot of money.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how many people are walking around there with tons more than $10,000 in their accounts. So they would do drills on us, like these are the various salespeople that were being trained with me, would be taken to a bridge over a freeway and told to count the cars and add up the money. And every car at that time, I think, was worth, say, $3,000. Well, if you're up above a freeway, I mean, that's a lot of money going underneath you. You know, so you kind of get the idea that, oh, my God, there's a lot of money out in the world. I'm not in my little bubble. So, yeah, it was sales. It was a business. The things that were looked for were new people and income, period, every week. And they wanted to make more income every week than the previous week.
Did they ever give you? Did they ever give you like goals, or I know a lot of sales organizations they always set up goals for their salesmen. Were their goals put in place?
Yes, they were in writing and they were checked on, usually a few times a day. And it was laid out which person you were going to get how much money from. You know, you planned, okay, I'm going to meet with Mary Ann O'Donnell and I'm going to sell her a $10,000 course. Or we just heard that Johnny got his royalty check in and it was over $20,000, so we think we should be able to get $15,000 out of him. I've just talked to his accountant and he said, yeah, he can afford it. See, the people don't necessarily know that the Scientologists talk with your Scientology accountant.
Okay.
And maybe that accountant is your recognized field staff member, and maybe they're getting a cut of everything that you pay in. You don't know.
Right.
So, Nancy, the title of your book is My Billion-Year Contract. What is the billion-year contract? I mean, it just the word, the billion-year contract. I mean, what is this entailing? I mean, how could it be for a billion years?
Well, supposedly in Scientology we live over and over again. They do have a belief in reincarnation. So you live out your life with them, and then you're given 21 years off before you have to check back in. Now, that was not my understanding when I signed it. I looked at it at first, and I went, oh, my God, a billion years. They want the rest of my life. I'm not going to do that. And then I remembered someone said, no, it was going to be all done in 5 years. So I went, well, yeah, okay, I could do 5 years. So that was how they got me to sign it. Other people, I don't know. My husband actually got a lot of people to sign a billion-year contract, and when he would tell me in his business that he wasn't a very good salesman, I'd say, anybody that can get people to sign a billion-year contract and devote their life to something for $10 a week and a lot of beans and rice, you can sell. So that's what the billion-year contract is. It is part of the elite, very cult-like part of Scientology called the Sea Organization. It started out on ships on the ocean, which is why it's called the Sea Organization, and they were naval uniforms coming from the ship. They still do have a couple of ships, although most of their work is on land now. And this group of people is like controlled by the group. If you're a member of this group, your time 24/7 is monitored.
Now, is the Sea Organization open to anyone in the church, or do you have to qualify for it?
There are some qualifications, and they've shifted over the years. The last time I really looked at the qualifications, they were so stringent that only a teenager who's done nothing with their life could qualify.
Mm-hmm.
And they have recruited a lot of young children and teenagers.
How high in the levels had you reached while you were in Scientology?
Initially, I reached the highest level that there was for many years, called OT7, Operating Satan Level 7. And then, a number of years later, that changed, and all of a sudden, what I did for numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7 weren't being done anymore. And so I did the new OT4 and OT5, which is basically what you continue to do on 6 and 7. So yeah, counseling-wise, I got to the top, and in terms of their training, I'm about as trained in administrative technology as you can. I mean, I can be an expert witness on their administrative techniques.
Now, you also held other positions as the years went by within Scientology, and I've read that you were personal aide to L. Ron Hubbard himself, as well as being in the espionage sector. Can you tell our listeners what it was like working directly with L. Ron Hubbard? I mean, what kind of person was he?
He was a very varied, emotion-filled person. He could laugh with you, and he could scream like you don't believe, and I never was personally with him because he was off at a sort of in hiding when I was working with him. We would send what's called telexes. These were like emails of the day, and you could go back and forth just like you can with emails here. You know, you can answer it and then get another one in an hour, get another one, not as fast as texting, but pretty fast. And my first day actually working, I worked underneath his daughter in her office, and she was directly working for him. So the first day I took over her job, when she went off for her maternity leave, I arrive at my desk and look up, and there are two, they're called Commodore's Messengers. And they're all dressed in black, and they both have clipboards, and they won't talk to me. Now, in the C organization, you are taught that when you are talking to a Commodore's Messenger, you are communicating to L. Ron Hubbard directly. There's, that's it. There's no, and they are trained to capture the nuances of your reactions and your behavior, your body language, your everything to relay back to him. They're also trained to send you messages in his exact tone of voice, how he wants it received. So these two messengers dressed in black spend the entire day following me around. Now, when I got to my desk, there was this lengthy dispatch from Hubbard that was really like, how come you haven't done this? Where are you? Are you just, twiddling your thumbs till your boss comes back, but I want to see this and this and this. And I must have passed because the next morning I got a good job kind of a communication from him. And then we went forward for the next year and a half or so. I was directly in communication with him on a variety of projects. The last one that I was briefed on, which was actually the most frightened, I think, no, I've had more frightening parts, but it was the first absolutely to my core scary briefing. And I was brought into a room by one of his public relations officers to be briefed on a secret program. And when I say secret, I'm saying maybe there are 10 people in the world that have read it. And it is called the Messianic Program. Now, I had already been in. He's not a god to me. I never put him on a pedestal, so there was never anything to fall off. He was human. He had foibles. He made mistakes. He would get angry. He was human. Whereas there were some others that I noticed in the Sea Org and whatnot that really they hung on his every single syllable, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm reading. The day before, I had been listening to a private confidential tape of his to one individual, and almost the entire tape he was yelling at her. And I literally had to take the headphones off of my head and put them on the floor, and I could still hear him loud and clear. So then I walked into this woman's office, and she wants to brief me on this program that Hubbard had written, and it's called the Messianic Program. And I start reading it. Now, I know she is watching my face, just like the messengers do. She wants to get a read. She wants to kind of, what is my actual first reaction? Do you follow?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to keep a poker face because after about 2 paragraphs in my head, I'm going, he thinks he's like Jesus? Oh, my God. You know, like, this man is nuts. Oh, my God. Oh, and she's looking at me. Oh, I better not show that. And I'm just, like, struggling to read this program while, wow, this is great. And internally in my head, I'm going, where's the door? You know, I've dug myself in here deep, and I've got to get out. And within a few days of that, I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force along with my husband, and I often wonder, did a report go back to him that I really didn't take well to the Messianic Program? There have been things that I've seen being done even by the current leader, David Miscavige, that I had seen planned in that program by him.
Wow. I mean,
and it was all about making him the next Messiah for the planet Earth.
This is absolutely frightening to me. But you just mentioned the RPF. Now, can you explain to us exactly what is the RPF?
Well, I want to make sure first that you don't have any other questions about him wanting to be Buddha or Jesus.
Anthony, do you have, I mean, I'm totally amazed.
No, I mean, it's from what I had understood, and I had very little understanding about Scientology prior to Luci and I discussing what we were going to talk about tonight. And I had always thought that the idea that L. Ron Hubbard was the opposite of that idea, that he did not want to portray himself as being this God, as being the one above everyone else. Maybe that was just the cover, of course, along with everything else that Scientology has sort of propagated, out in the media, and then behind the scenes is a different story. But that was my understanding, that he never thought of himself that way, and that was sort of the attraction to this quote unquote religion.
You are absolutely correct, and that was part of my attraction. And like I said, I never had him on a pedestal. I never expected him to be a perfect person. And he wasn't. He clearly wasn't. So this day, being shown this, his true feelings, and I'd already known from earlier little puzzle pieces that I was aware of, no, this was absolutely from Hubbard, and this is the true thing behind the cover.
Did he ever explain, or did this Messianic papers, did they ever explain how he came to that conclusion, or how did he come to profess that he is? How did he make everyone believe that?
Well, this program was all about making everyone believe that.
Okay.
And I come back to a few things in my education that I went, oh, yeah, this is, okay, this is how they're doing it. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's work, but he did an excellent video on when man becomes a myth. The first thing about making a man a myth is he's got to be dead. And then the second thing about making man a myth is that all the people that actually knew him in real life have to be gone. They have to be gotten rid of. Do you remember any of this?
Yeah, I understand that concept, and I've heard that before. I mean, it only makes sense because you don't have anybody, one, alive to, you know, the mistaken thing of coming forward and telling the real truth. So if nobody else is around that's been around while that person's been there as a man and now is a myth after they have crossed over onto the other side, it only makes sense that you can basically create any story that you could after that fact, and then it becomes this myth.
That's right. That's right. And
there's no one to dispute it.
There's no one left to dispute it. That is absolutely correct. There's no one left to dispute it. And what I noticed at that time, which I didn't know at the time, but that's when David Miscavige was making his push to consolidate and take over the power.
Now, you mentioned that was sort of his sort of one step into becoming the head or becoming the leader. But I had heard a story while doing the research on this that some folks believe that L. Ron Hubbard's closest friends, and I forget their names, I think it was Pat and somebody else,
Pat Brooker and Danny Brooker. Correct.
And I believe, or they believed, that they were supposed to be the next in line, and somehow, David Miscavige sort of, I don't know if the right word is blackmailed or some other way to try and ease them out by, quote unquote, threatening them, and then he then became into the spotlight.
He did. I don't know exactly how he did it, but he got rid of Pat Brooker. Pat Brooker, and I knew him. I mean, he was at one time a friend of mine, and I did track him down, but I've never been able to actually talk to him. I mean, he is, talk about in hiding, he's in hiding. But this was the beginning of David Miscavige's. See, Pat was the end. Pat was the last person he had to get rid of, Pat and Annie Broker, right? Back in the early days of his takeover, one of the first major things that he did was he removed, I don't know if it was a dozen, but it was the major people that were running Scientology at that time and that had all personally worked for Hubbard and had a personal communication respect with Hubbard, right? So, and I looked back and I went, none of those people would have let David Miscavige take over and be in charge.
Because at the time, David was a young man. He was, what,
Very
in his early
young.
20s? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how could anyone think that a young person of that age could lead an organization or, think that L. Ron Hubbard would have someone at that young age to run an organization? But then on the flip side, I've heard also, too, that the reason possibly that L. Ron Hubbard may have sort of delegated this position to David was that because he was so young that he could extend this because of his longevity in life. He's got a good 40, 50 years at least on Earth to extend this religion and bring it up to a higher level. And that may have been the reason why L. Ron Hubbard may have, quote unquote, chosen David to follow in his footsteps.
I have actually never seen anything or heard anything about Hubbard choosing David Miscavige.
That's what I thought, but
that's what the cover story is.
Right.
Because they discredited Pat and Annie Broker. Pat and Annie Broker are who he chose to come into hiding with him and who he chose to be his closest confidants.
And when David came out, I think there was like a sort of call to order, and he created this sort of quote-unquote town hall for a bunch of members. I'm not sure if it was, a level and up, to attend this big meeting, and that's where he had announced that L. Ron Hubbard had crossed over, and then sort of subtly said that basically he was going to be in the position. Had anyone in the organization, and I'm not sure if this was during your time, had anyone in the organization known or expected that at that moment?
No, David Miscavige didn't. I was there at that event, and it is on the Internet. And he didn't say that he was now in charge. I mean, it gave him a lot of weight that he was
Right.
the one that broke the news, but Pat Broker was right there. And that is when the issue written by LRH making Pat Broker and his wife like his number one and two people. And that made sense.
Right.
It wasn't for months until, oh, my God, we've gotten rid of Pat Broker, and we discovered, oh, he lied. Well, Pat's not there to defend himself because they've gotten rid of him.
Mm.
So now it's the monkey in the middle. David Miscavige is the one left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're paranormal, I want to discuss something that I've never discussed before.
Sure.
And that is, years later, after the Messianic survey came out, there was a certain issue that was put on the Internet. It was supposedly the OT, Operating Satan, level number 8. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, for me, and I got to preface this with this is my opinion. It comes from information that I have and puzzle pieces that make sense to me, okay? Even when I first read that, certain paragraphs, oh, my God, this is Hubbard. I mean, this is just my first instant reaction. There was stuff that was not, that could have been a ghostwriter, but there were certain paragraphs that, oh, they reminded me of the Messianic Program. And if you remember this OT8 bulletin, it was all about he's the next Messiah, except he's Lucifer, Satan, coming back for the second coming. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
And it was, when it initially was leaked, the church lawyers jumped on it and claimed copyright.
Right.
And it was only later that they backtracked and said, no. It's a fraud. It's nothing. But that always kind of stuck with me. In later education and actually within the past year, I came to befriend a person who was, you remember Hubbard was part of that Pasadena Aleister Crowley OTO group?
Yes. With Parsons, I believe, right?
Yes, with Jack Parsons.
Yes.
And they wanted to create this baby and like Rosemary's Baby and all this other stuff. Well,
the Moonchild.
Yes, the Moonchild. I became friends with the person who had just left the position as head of that chapter, which still exists to this day. And we've had many, many discussions about where Hubbard got what, because he knows all the stuff from that side, the dark side, and I know it all from what came out of him to be entwined with Scientology. It's been a very enlightening experience. And then I have the research paper that I wish got broader exposure. It is an article written by the sociologist and the scholar Hugh Urban, and it's called The Occult Roots of Scientology. And it goes all the way back into it in terms of the connection with satanic stuff and other beliefs like that the God that everybody on this earth thinks of as a God is really just a crazy person. And there's two gods. It's like some kind of very weird thing. And it teaches that everything that's here, this comes from the old Gnostic beliefs, Gnostic, that everything here on this planet, A, is an illusion, which I don't have a problem with, but B, is something to be destroyed and to get out of. That's the Gnostic belief, and that is a belief that runs through Scientology. Many people after Hubbard died said they wanted to die to go join him. You know, or people that have cancer that are dedicated Scientologists will just say, no, I don't want any treatment. I just want to drop this body and go get a brand new one.
Right.
I mean, to that degree, that's kind of destructive, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The illusion, I agree with, but you know what? We can stay here and we can have fun with each other. It doesn't have to be all negative. So in any case, I'm just saying that in my most recent years worth of study, I am really digging into this matter, and I want to put out a few other bits of information that I have gathered together along the way. A large portion I got from a book called The Ultimate Evil, and within that book I learned things that I had already known parts of it. So when he filled me in, it was like, oh yeah, that's true. For example, you all know people saying Charlie Manson was a Scientologist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the church denies it. No. He was in prison and somebody taught him, had him read Dianetics. That's it, right? And that's the story they put out. But in actual fact, they did find an e-meter at the ranch, and one of his second-hand men named Bruce Davis, who is in prison at this time for life, and he's now become a Christian, he had actually worked as a Scientologist. I don't know whether it was in the Sea Org. I believe it was, because the location where he said he lived was a Sea Organization birthing place where Sea Org members slept in England. And he was there for almost a year. And he then left there and flew back to Los Angeles. Now, the story from the church is we threw him out because he was bad. Yet, when he first arrives back in L.A., he is hanging around all these Scientologists. And there's one boarding house that has several women in it. And he's dating a few of them. The last woman that he dated dumped him. And she then ended up dead. It's an unsolved murder. And her death, which is right in the Manson book, her death was done very similarly to the Tate LaBanca murders. Okay? So you've got that little bit of evil that kind of gets spawned off.
Yeah.
In addition, you've got a group called The Process, which is absolutely a satanic group, and when I was a spy, they sent me to spy on it. Why? Because it was begun by two high-level Scientologists. And the Process has been suspected of deaths of people. Just suspicion, whatever. You can read the book for yourself and find out their connection. But the connection for me was, here's another couple of high-level Scientologists who are now practicing out front Satanism. And then you skip to Son of Sam, David Berkowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he was given his orders by a barking dog in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Yes.
That barking dog was owned by two brothers, both of whom were high-profile or very, very active Scientologists.
I never heard of that link.
I know. It's in Ultimate Evil, and I do know that I remember this, I remember bits of this. So when I read it in Ultimate Evil, it kind of went, oh yeah, that was why this and this and this. In any case, the two brothers ended up dead within a year, mysteriously murdered in separate locations under separate circumstances. But either in David Berkowitz's apartment or on his person was found the phone number to the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, Florida, the Mecca of Scientology.
Wow.
Not very many people know of those connections. And for me, do I think that Hubbard ran all these organizations? No. But I think that Hubbard was playing with phenomenon that should not be played with, period. There's a reason Pandora's box is closed. And when you start delving into the spirit world, as I'm sure you're aware, you can bring in a lot of negativity, even if your heart is pure.
To me, it just seems like a desperate man who's this science fiction writer, and starting off as becoming this writer and conjuring up all of these stories and putting them in books and putting them to paper. It seems as though it's just this desperate soul trying to live whatever that odd fantasy is in his head and creating this sort of mental reality.
Right. Yes, I'm not a psychologist, and I've only taken a few psychology courses, so I'm by no means an expert. But when I was studying about bipolar disorder, the manic episodes followed by the depressing episodes and the outbursts of anger, I kind of go, wow, that's like what Hubbard was like. You never knew what his mood was going to be day to day.
Could that be another reason why he was so negative, or the group is so negative towards psychology? Finding that truth that he knew is out there, or is that possibility, and sort of damning it. He knew psychology would find out the real him, and therefore turn the tables around.
In part, that is right. The Occult Roots of Scientology by Hugh Urban really goes into that, and how he came out of the 50s era, and the 50s era was all about psychiatrists and psychology, this kind of 50s kind of thing, which is still what Scientology is fighting right now, even though it's long gone. It doesn't exist anymore in the world of psychiatry. But, yeah, and then there's there is that streak of megalomania, obviously. He had affirmations. You guys are familiar with affirmations, right?
Mm-hmm.
These only came out later. They came out in a trial with someone who was actually authorized to do his biography, and he started researching his personal papers, and they discovered these affirmations. Now, I know affirmations, and I've done them, and I've seen others, and he had affirmations like, all men are my willing slaves. That was his affirmation for the future, written in the late 40s, early 50s. And I read that, and I looked at the Sea Organization. And I went,
basically what he created.
Exactly.
Right.
I went, oh my God, affirmations really are powerful, but I can't imagine the mind that would think of that to have as a desire to experience in reality.
Which also kind of explains the billion-year contract.
There you go. How are we going to be slaves if he doesn't have us locked in for life?
But from your experience and your knowledge of Scientology, how could someone like Tom Cruise, who I think is sort of, semi-normal, get so wrapped up and become, the poster child for Scientology?
Because he's kept in a bubble. I always believed, like what you said, that Hubbard was different. He was a person. He said, don't believe it. If you don't agree with it, just don't use it. Move forward. Find the things that you do agree with and use them. That was the cavalier guy that I was introduced to. That was the PR image. And it wasn't, for me, my wake-up was reading that Messianic program. That was, what was it in The Wizard of Oz, where you get behind the curtain and there's this little tiny man? That's what it was like for me. That, oh my God. Somebody like Tom Cruise is never going to see those L. Ron Hubbard personal non-public messages that he would send, some of which were very, very, very vindictive. These were his personal communications to his personal aides and assistants, in which he's got more candor than he does to the public.
Right.
Tom doesn't know any of this. And when you go into the world of celebrity, you get one of the key things. Remember earlier I was talking about the ruin that would they would wait for the person to be in ruin, and then okay, we have the solution. It doesn't matter what is ruining you; they're going to tell you they can fix it. That's the lie in sales that nobody knows. But most of the salesmen really think that Scientology is the answer to everything, so they're being actually honest. So the people like Tom Cruise, yes, they're recruited the same, but they're celebrities, and I've done a lot of work. I mean, I was the president of Celebrity Center. When I was Hubbard's aides, I was in charge of celebrities internationally. And so I've been out with them, and I got to tell you, I would never want to be a celebrity. You lose that privacy. When you walk into a restaurant with a celebrity, it's not the same as you walking into a restaurant.
Right.
Everybody starts looking at you, and you hear this pss, 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 pss everywhere.
Right.
You know, I've had celebrities that had been on location for months and months and had not seen. It was a guy, and he hadn't seen his daughter for that long. And there he gets off the plane, he sees his daughter, she runs towards him for a hug, and a fan steps in the middle of that moment and asks for an autograph. So this is their life. It's not fun. And they can't trust. Is somebody with me because I'm famous, or is somebody with me because they really care? So Scientology offers the help. They'll help the celebrity with this. We will screen and security clear all the people working for you. And then, you know, what we'd like you to have, this is for the very wealthy, we'd like you to have a Scientology trained person to act as your companion as you go through life. And those companions cost $10,000 a week, and the rich person and or celebrity pays for that. When the other side of the coin is that this person is spying on them and sending them reports.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So the celebrity is paying to be spied upon. The irony is like unbelievable. But just like the Truman Show, just imagine how easy this would be when Tom and Katie were first getting together. Remember, she had her best friend forever? Went shoe shopping with her, was in every interview with her, was like they were glued together. So Katie is very unsteady and she's new. She goes on the internet, and this quote-unquote friend sees she's headed towards some news article negative about Scientology. So instantly she just goes, looks at her watch and says, "Oh, Katie, remember, we have to get started getting dressed. We got to go meet Tom in a little bit." She has no concept that she's just been diverted from learning something they did not want her to learn. That's how subtle and insidious it is.
Is this part of what you part of your program when you were working in the espionage office?
When I was working in the espionage office, it was doing things like that, but not for members. It hadn't advanced to that level where, you know, the spies were actively working on members. Like, Marty Rathburn has exposed the fact that when Tom Cruise was with Nicole Kidman, he drifted away from Scientology. Not in a bad way, not a hate it, whatever, but he just wasn't doing it. During a large portion of those years, his personal assistant was a Scientologist who sent David Miscavige daily reports. They were watching him when he wasn't even active. And Marty's also, he's recently come out and said it on TV, but he's said it on his blog before that, you know, he was very instrumental in the Nicole-Tom divorce. And once, I don't know if it was settled or just Nicole was separate from Tom, he actually saw the then president of the church, you know, in the house, hanging out with the kids and explaining to them what an evil a suppressive person is, and the characteristics of such a person, and that Nicole was such a person. I mean, this is the kid's mother.
Mhm.
And that is reported by Marty Rathbun, who saw it himself and saw and heard it himself. And it is the end result. Her children did become estranged from her.
I had read while researching about this that, and again, I don't know how true this is, but have you ever heard of the CAN organization, the Cult Awareness Network?
Very much so. In fact, one of the people I mentioned in my book, Greg Bashaw, who had a nervous breakdown in Florida, and they abandoned him, sent him back to Chicago, and he eventually killed himself. But during our talks before that, he then filled me in. He was very key, very instrumental in that CAN takeover.
That story amazed me because they completely battered this organization who, I mean, their main purpose was to expose and, I'm assuming, I guess, try and convert cult members of many different organizations of that nature to come back over to sort of reality. But
it was more like, it was education. It was education.
Right.
This is what this group says. This is what really happens.
But now I'm finding that and again, I don't know if this is true or not, but Scientology now owns the CAN organization.
Yeah, it's called the Cult Awareness Unit. Cult Awareness Network. If you want to know about cults and your child is in a cult, and you call the Cult Awareness Network, a Scientologist will answer the phone.
Are they trying? I mean, it's supposedly supposed to help them, but are they then trying to sort of, give the good name of Scientology in that case? If maybe a parent is calling about someone who is in Scientology, what happens on that phone call?
Oh, they just try and fix it and make the person feel better and defuse the anger and, get that parent to not be a threat anymore.
It just amazes me how much Scientology has sort of spawned its web into every facet that people just aren't aware of and don't know.
Yeah, they're in education all over the place. They're in drug rehabilitation in Narconon, which has never shown good products, people that actually come off drugs and stay off drugs.
Right.
So they basically have infiltrated a lot. Remember that Time magazine article?
Yes.
The Cult of Greed, and it had the octopus in every single different area?
Yeah.
That's the truth. They have all these front groups. In fact, I was at one time, their business front group is called WISE, the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. And it's called that because initially it was set up not to be a consulting company. It was set up for Scientologists who own businesses to work together and settle disputes. So that's why it was named World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. Later, they discovered, oh my God, we can make a lot of money here.
Yeah.
And I remember the day I was doing consulting work, but I got clients because I did not talk about Scientology. And so people who would go to these Sterling, that was total Scientology front group, they would go to these great seminars, and they'd leave going, God, I really want that good stuff, the business side of things, but I don't want any of the Scientology crap. So I was known as the consultant that you could get that didn't give you any of the Scientology stuff. And I held my ground on that. If somebody really wanted to know, I had another friend. I'd say, here's her name, here's her phone number. You want to know anything, call her, because I am here for your business, and I cannot talk to you about that. And I remember the day that the purpose of WISE changed from simply getting Hubbard administrative techniques out in the business world, and it changed to making new Scientologists in writing. So it's like they weren't even ending anymore.
From what I understand, also too, that the Church of Scientology has transformed many times from the beginning, ever since you've been in there as well, to what it is now. It's just constantly rearranging and changing its MO, its the mission, its publicity and media outlets. It's just constantly changing. I'm assuming to adapt to an ever-changing generation.
And isn't that scary? They have a word. What?
It kind of reminds me of a sheepish, being in the paranormal world, a sheepish evil demon just trying to transform itself. And Lucy and I have been we're paranormal investigators, and we've been in a lot of locations where anything evil will try and manipulate you to coerce you into believing that it is good. Once it has you in its grasp, it will turn around and show its true face. And so a lot of times paranormal investigators will say, I spoke to this little child or this woman, but in essence later on have found out that it was some sort of evil spirit that was just trying to get you closer and open up, so that once you do open up, it will engulf you and envelop you and create whatever havoc it wants to. This is exactly the same thing.
And I can't agree with you more. And that's why earlier I said he opened Pandora's box. He was like a bull in a china shop. He had no concept of what he was playing with.
Right.
Just as you've described. He unleashed this evil.
How did you...
Nancy,
go ahead, Lucy.
So all of these organizations, these sub-organizations, is it possible then that each one of these organizations are almost working on their own as opposed to one big organization?
No, they're all coordinated.
So they're all connected.
And all roads lead back to David Miscavige.
Yeah, I think that's how they've sort of stood the test of time. They've all had to be guided and directed in the same fashion, or else they would have been breakdowns all over.
Exactly. It's a pyramidical organization, or you could call it tyrannical. Tyrannical? How do you pronounce it? Run by a tyrant.
Right.
There you go. And, recently you have L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter escaped, and so did David Miscavige's dad and his stepmom, which I am so happy for them that they got out.
Yeah, I've heard his I believe his brother and his sister-in-law and his niece.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're out. They've been out for a long time. The niece came out, and she started the board. If you really want to hear and see some of the evil things that have been done, ex-ScientologyKids.com.
Yes.
And that's where all the Scientology kids communicate what their childhoods were like. It's scary. It really is when you think about it. And I've had to work with people that have gotten out in their 20s or 30s, and they joined when they were 14, never had a high school education, They were in the Sea Org for all this time. They arrive in the real world and don't even know what a resume is, let alone how to put one together. It's very tragic. It's very tragic.
And not many people leave on sort of good standings. I mean, I've heard of a lot
I tried
of...
for years to get out safely. That was like my little motto in my head. Okay, if I just make this move and then that move, I can get out without getting bit. Well, I guess you can't, because at least I couldn't, and I worked on it for years of separating myself, and as you read in my book, I divest myself of a chunk at a time, Okay, until I'm standing there and there's nothing left that I even like.
And you were one of the lucky ones. I mean, there are others who have left, by suicide, by murder,
Exactly. And that is when in the introduction to my book, that's when I decided I had to get my book out. When a person who used to be my sister-in-law and she was the new OT8, top of the, top of the counseling. She had been in for 36 years.
Wow.
Spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and also got others to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. And she was actually driving her car around my block, trying to get up the courage to call me. And because she was afraid I wouldn't see her. And I said, God, come over. Yeah, how soon can you be here? And she says, well, I'm actually just right down the street. I said, okay, come. She was suicidal. She was suicidal. After getting everything, she's suicidal. So I come back to that little line that's in the Bible that I think has a lot of truth. You will know them by their fruit. What's in the backwater of the boat of Scientology? What's in the backwash? That's what they're producing. And they're only showing you the front of the boat that's all nice and clean and pretty.
Now, I was originally going to ask you the question of how you ended up leaving, but I'd rather leave that up to the readers. And Nancy's book is called My Billion-Year Contract, Memoir of a Former Scientologist. But I do want to ask you, do you think the Church of Scientology will collapse and fold under at some point?
Well, it's based on lies. I mean, I have a very close friend that, in fact, established all their legal matters, and it's called the religious cloaking of this multifaceted organization. When I was there, we were trying to open Scientology in Japan. Again, it had been attempted once before, so I had to study all these countries around the world where Scientology could not be a religion. Well, that was no problem, because they just did the same thing. Same books, same administration, same courses, same prices, same everything. But it just wasn't called a church. So they adapt, as you were saying. They just, they will change colors. Hubbard called the Sea Organization the word Fabian, Fabian, which means you can't pin them down. They'll appear here, there, and everywhere, which is why the Sea Org started on a ship, because they'd be out on the ocean, who would know where they were and what they were doing.
Right.
And then they just pick a port. So they were very, very Fabian, and there's a lot of power in being Fabian.
Right.
But again, I agree with you on the evil nature of the paranormal. It exists. It exists, and it's not something to play with lightly, as I'm sure you two know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's almost like
a lot.
It's a lot to take in, and that's why we wanted to have you on tonight. And to share with everyone your story. And, again, I think a lot of people out there, a majority, are like me. We've heard of Scientology. We've seen the commercial for Dianetics and all that, years ago, and even currently now I've actually been seeing some. So, the idea of this quote-unquote religion out there, I think, should be exposed. And I commend every effort that you have made in writing this book, and, the groups like Anonymous and other groups out there that are trying to get the truth out there to save people, because that's what this is all about. This organization... I'm sorry, say that again?
And people like you in the media, you have never been afraid to tackle this subject on your show. I'm talking to the media now that they ask me, they go, oh, my God, all these horrible things are happening. Why hasn't anybody done anything about it? And I said, well, they've infiltrated our government. It's run by Wall Street and Scientology. So that leaves you, the media. So ask yourself, where have you been? CNN, when I went on CNN, those lawyers were scared. They were scared. One reporter called me up and said, oh, thank God the Tom and Katie thing came out. Now they're going to let me do a story regarding Scientology.
And you know what? I'm surprised that we haven't heard more. With the news of Tom and Katie coming out, they're sort of fixated just on the story and alluding to here's the possibility of why. And recently now I've heard within New York that Katie is, I believe, or the rumor is that she has sort of attached herself to a Catholic church here in New York, and that she's seeking the help, and I guess sort of trying to rehabilitate herself from what she has gone through, and I believe she's doing that with her daughter. But then again, the rumors are going back and forth that Tom Cruise had just given Suri an audit. So it amazes me that they've just fixated on the Tom Cat, phenomenon, but they haven't brought up anything about Scientology that I'm aware of in the major news media.
Briefly, but you're right. And I decided a couple of days ago, I said, look, I'm not going to talk to these reporters or television shows or whatever that want just a little bit of fluff or a soundbite. This is a real and present danger, and people's lives are on the line, as you're well aware.
How did you feel about the Piers Morgan interview that you just had?
Again, the lawyers were, what are you going to say? What are you going to, and then they stuck on the religious person, the theologian,
yes.
Which, of course, they get into new religious movements and they never know which ones are going to become the next Catholic Church or whatever, or the next Christianity movement, right? So they're careful. But they had to stick her on, which gave Steve and I very little bits of time.
Right.
And in actual fact, because she was on, is why I brought up that, no, this was not a religion. And he cut me off. And I was about to say that Hubbard himself sent me basically a message saying he wished he had never listened to his advisors and had never gone the church route.
I noticed that Piers did cut you off.
Yeah, and it was right when I was about to say that. Hubbard was in it for the money.
Yeah, and the power.
And the power, and the megalomania came out, of course. He thinks he's Lucifer, come back to I don't know what. Lucifer, it's like the same Gnostic kind of thought, okay, that I've now been learning about, because I'm training to be a chaplain, so I'm learning about all of these other, places where Hubbard took stuff from. And the God that you think is a good God is actually a bad God. So therefore, Lucifer, who you think is a bad guy, is actually the bearer of light, because that's what the word means, and he's a good guy. And he's L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, which is really amazing. It does, but you know what? And the thing is that I can honestly say before we did the research on this, I knew nothing about Scientology. So I took it from the perspective of looking at the site and reading everything. And the first thing that struck me is that the marketing of the site is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And the feeling I got from reading it was like, oh, this is so amazing and this is so good and it looks really, really well. And listening to you now, it's like I see where the marketing is really, really important in this.
Mhm. Exactly. And the head marketing director, he wrote his own book. His name is Jefferson Hawkins. You might want to have him on your show sometime. He was in charge of the international marketing for a very long time. So he knows exactly how many members they really have.
Amazing.
I know. So, we've covered a lot that I've never covered. I just am feeling like, especially after Karen de la Carriere, did you hear what had happened to her?
Yes.
That's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But she and others are like, Tom Cruise is getting visitation rights? There's no other Scientologist who's allowed to have visitation rights with any family members.
Right, who are non-Scientology members.
Exactly.
Or who have left, correct.
Or who have left.
But, I mean, that goes to the rumor mill again. Has she really left? You know, is there some sort of agreement? You know, I don't know if we'll ever know the whole truth. And I think it's sort of sad because I believe she still wants to be an actress. And I think, you know, in her next movie or her next, you know, appearance of whatever it's going to be, I believe that this is going to be the topic of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you keep that quiet? How do you keep it hidden and still have the trust of your audience?
Well, two things. Picture tells 1,000 words. Don't listen to anybody else. Just take a look at the picture of her pre-settlement and post-settlement. That is one relieved woman.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that's just from the pictures. That's nobody's opinion. Just look at her. And then the fact that she publicly, which she must have publicly done this. This wasn't a private parishioner, like I just moved, so I'm going to go to a new Catholic church and sign in, right? Nobody's going to know, you know. So she had to want that information to be out.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would not be known.
Right.
You know, and she didn't have to actually sign up with a parish. She could have just started going to Mass quietly on her own. But she didn't. And that, to me, tells a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Nancy, I just want to say, you know what, this was absolutely eye-opening, and it is truly, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for speaking. And, you know, I'm speechless right now. But I would like to mention
I have to tell you, it's like I have never been this frank with anyone else. And a lot of this information is only what I got in the last years. I'm sorry?
We truly appreciate that. Thank you for being so open and candid with this, because we know it's not easy for you. You know, you're reliving it sort of in your mind as you're speaking and telling the story, and so to come on here and to be so candid and give us an insight to Scientology from your point of view and your beliefs and what you've gone through is truly an amazing story, and I commend you and thank you to the highest level not
really
OT8, but to the highest level that you've come on and shared your story with us.
And I appreciate it. You can call me anytime, either to do another show or just for follow-up questions, whatever. I am here. You have my numbers.
Absolutely.
We certainly will. I do want to mention your book again. It's called My Billion-Year Contract, Memoir of a Former Scientologist, and that's by Nancy Manny. And your website, it is www.mybillionyearcontract.com. Nancy, I want to thank you again.
And thank you for giving me a place where I feel safe enough to communicate this paranormal side of things. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and we
You're
hope
very
that,
welcome. So have a good night.
You too, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Okay. I'll talk later. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank
take care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
I think I need a minute.
I do too. I mean, that was an awful lot to absorb.
The thing that kept coming to me as she was describing a lot of, the inner workings of Scientology is like a virus that has just been mutating over the years. You hear about it all over the place that, this virus, the flu virus, has mutated and has become stronger or has developed in a different way, and now they have to sort of develop and invent a new medicine for this virus. And this is what it seems like. It seems as though it's just being mutated over the years, and, we have to come up with a different way, a creative way to combat it and get rid of it. And it seems as though it just will never die. It's almost like they say that, if the world were to end tomorrow, what would be the only living thing here? It would be the cockroach. And it seems as though that Scientology is the cockroach.
Well, the image I keep getting in my head is almost just like a leak of, like a dam, and there's just a small leak that comes through, and you look at it and you think, oh, we can sort of patch that up, but it just goes more and more and more, and by the time you look up, you're flooded. Then what do? That's the image just kept going through my head. I mean, I'm absolutely speechless. I mean, for once, I really do not. I don't know.
We were joking this week, for everybody listening. Lucy and I were actually joking this week, and talking about the fact that what would happen, what will happen if we talk about Scientology on our Friday show? Are we going to be sort of hammered? Are we going to be followed? Are we going to get phone calls, or are we going to sort of have spies on us? And I could say it was a little funny. Sometimes it was a little bit scary, a scary thought. But you know what I said? We live in America. This is supposed to be the land of the free. We can speak our mind and discuss whatever it is that is out there. We're not harming anyone. We're not doing anything harmful to someone physically. We are just speaking our mind. We are laying the information out there for people, again, like we've always said in all our shows, we put it out there to make up, your own minds. This show may have been a little bit more biased, but I think a majority would agree with us. I think that Scientology is corrupt. It is a cult. We don't believe it to be a religion. There's so much evidence out there that, L. Ron Hubbard himself doesn't consider it, or had not considered it, a religion. And as Nancy was saying before, it was basically only meant for the accountants and the lawyers. And the reason for that is because the FBI had investigated and raided Scientology. And this was before they considered it a religion. And so in order for them to, I guess, get out of being shut down, disbanded, sued, arrested, whatever it may be, they had to create this word religion for Scientology. And that's all it is. It's just a legal term for them, basically, so that, this organization can continue to regurgitate and spit out all of what I consider to be just nonsense and, again, science fiction, which is the base of what L. Ron Hubbard started this off as. He was a science fiction writer and then delved into Satanism and satanic worship and then created the quote-unquote Dianetics.
Well, one thing I want to point out, too, I mean, it's not just Scientology. I mean, being a Catholic, there are people that have opinions about being Catholic, where their opinion is that the church is also a money-making organization. You know, there's critique about that. There's other religions that are. But basically, talking to Nancy, I think she's giving her opinion from what she's seen and what she's experienced. So I think basically what we wanted to do was just put it out there and let people make their own minds up. I mean, honestly, what I'm picturing in my head is this show was not to down anything in particular, but to give the facts. And Nancy is a person that was involved in it, and she's lived it, and she's, we wanted to give her a platform so that she could speak about it. And I guess ultimately the final decision is up to you, the listener. I mean, what you heard is there, and you take from it what you're given. I mean, it's totally, no matter what, people are going to make their own decisions about what they hear and what they believe.
Yeah, the chat. Excuse me. The chat right now that's going on in our chat room is basically, thanking Nancy and for being so brave. And yeah, there are things that happen and will happen to former members, and not even former members, but people who do speak bad about Scientology. And there's actually a rule or a policy within Scientology that I have read about called the fair game. And the fair game basically is, eye for an eye. If you are going to go on the radio or you're going to go around town telling folks and informing folks of how bad Scientology is or, what bad things that they've done, they in turn have the right, according to this fair game, to turn the table onto you specifically and badmouth you publicly, privately as well. And we've heard of and we've seen so many instances where, people have gone out in our town, maybe it was a large recruiting town or city, and, some folks had gotten together to try and, I guess, give the real deal, the real, truth about what Scientology is, and they in turn were affected by this fair game, and posters about them, malicious lies were created about them. Their picture and their address and their phone number was put all over town. And this is how they act. This is supposedly a religious organization. And I know I'm Catholic. If I go around and I say, you know what, this is what the priests have been doing to children, and this is this, and that, all the stories that have accumulated over the years about the Catholic Church. If I go out and do that, I don't have the Catholic Church turning around, and putting my information on posters all over my town, or trying to get me fired from my job, or any of that stuff. This is completely different. This is, to me, again, not a religion. This is a cult. This is an organization of power and greed. And what they're basically doing, see, the difference between Lisa, you were talking about how sort of a lot of other religions or organizations like this sort of can be in the same category. The Catholic Church asks for money. They ask for money. They accept money. The donations within church. Yeah, of course. Everybody wants money. And this is my opinion, every organization needs the money to fulfill their mission, to keep things going for their parishioners, for their members. But to me, the difference is, Catholic religion and Judaism and Buddhism, all these other religions provide hope for its members and its followers. It gives the word of hope, and it provides that freely. With Scientology, they sell you hope. Each level that you must go up in order to reach what they call clear, they're selling you the hope. You have to pay X amount of dollars. Here, $10,000, okay, you can get to the next level. And that gets you that much closer. So pay up. Here's the hope. Here's what you have to study and know, and then you can move on. To me, that's the difference between the two.
Mhm. And I think I'm still trying to grasp around the basis of selling, of being sold these programs to people. I mean, the average person nowadays barely has enough money to make ends meet. And here we have this sense of hope, that there's this organization that comes and will fix everything for you. I'm trying to make that connection to how someone will allow themselves to pay.
Well, I think it comes down to, and it's a hard concept for anyone of a normal stature to think about. How could you know all this information? How could you be duped into this cult, this religion? And I think it just comes down to a person's mentality. A lot of stories that we've read, and I believe including Nancy's story, is that, all things around you in your life have sort of either shut down or you have been left out of, or there is just, again, no hope for anything within your immediate surroundings. And this religion, the attraction that this religion has for people is that they'll take you in like a parent. They'll just be able to, wrap that blanket around you and, cuddle you so that you feel comfortable. And if your mindset is in the frame of mind that there's just nothing there for me, you're going to believe anyone that comes to you and says, you know what, I'm going to make it better. Here you go. Here's a blanket. Here's a cup of tea. You know what, let's talk. I can make it better for you. And it's those folks that they're attracted to. And it creates then the domino effect for other people in their lives, so that you've got now this person in the organization who can be a free marketing campaign to bring in more people. And that could be within family members, friends, anybody around them. That, I think, is how they sort of get in. And, a lot of people bring up that word brainwashing. It is. It basically is. But to brainwash someone, you yourself have to allow it to happen in that moment in your life. It has to be that you've been just so beaten down that you will give up everything to something else, to someone else. And at that point, it's very easy for anybody to, quote-unquote, brainwash you into something else, into doing something of what they want you to do. It's amazing and it's sad. And Luci, I wanted to talk. One of the questions that I actually had for Nancy that I didn't get to ask her was just her insight into children in the organization. And, we've heard a lot of stories of abuse. And it seems as though a lot of the recruits are children, 12,
they're
13.
Young.
Yeah, they're very young. They're, 13, 14, 15 years old. And, again, their minds are not adapt to understanding how things work in the world. And, it disgusts me that this organization feeds upon that to get members, and they will reach out to young children without anybody else's knowledge. They will reach out to young children. there's a lot of times, too, that children are sort of, quote-unquote, born into Scientology. You know, their parents were, and so, of course, they will become. But, Lucy, is it okay if I talk about the audio clip that I'm going to play?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I know that the audio clip that I have is not for the faint of heart. It is something that I don't want to play, but I think it's worth playing to just show what this religion does to young members, to children in the organization. And this side of the story is not very pretty at all. Upon doing a lot of the research for tonight's show, I was sort of directed to a video that's on YouTube, and it's actually not a video; it's an audio, and it was a secret audio clip that was secretly made back in, I believe it was 1988. And it was with a gentleman named Wally Hanks, who at that time was one of the highest-ranking levels or members of Scientology. I believe he was an OT7, because I think at that time, OT7 was the highest level ranking. But anyway, this gentleman, Wally Hanks, was in charge of, and I don't know the exact word of the department, but he basically oversaw the children's group. It was, I guess, a schooling or something of that nature for children. And I was directed to this video on YouTube, and what it entails, and I'm going to play this, it's about a 3.5-minute audio clip that I have. What it entails is a passing through that a child, or this child, whose name is Marco, had to go through, I guess, in a certain point in time in his Scientology, quote-unquote, career. And what it is paddling. It was a beating that this child had to endure by Wally Hanks. And the weird part of this, or the psychotic part of this, and you'll hear it in the audio, is that this child is, the child knows that he has to do this. So he's sort of not being taken against his will to have this happen. He understands that it is a quote-unquote part of the policy. But again, as a child, you're frightened. You don't want to get beaten. I don't want to get beaten, and I'm all grown up, you know. The child is forced, while getting beaten, to look at a picture of L. Ron Hubbard and to constantly look at this picture. And I guess they wanted to burn this image into this child's mind of L. Ron Hubbard. And in the clip, you'll hear him say LRH, which means L. Ron Hubbard. They don't say his name in full. They always just say LRH. And they proceed to beat him. And I'm going to play a little bit of the clip, but again, I don't want to play it, but I just wanted to get I wanted everybody to understand, talking about it in words may not express the feelings that I have towards this organization, and I think this clip, it disgusted me to hear this, and I wanted to share it with everyone just to see just for everyone to see the severity of it. And so if you are a faint of heart, please lower your volume, and after 3.5 minutes, you can turn your volume back up. But for all those who are listening, I do caution it is a disturbing audio clip that I'm going to play. So here we go.
Man, over this way. Oh, I'm so it's gonna hurt. That's the first step. You ready? Lean forward. Lean forward. Marco, I've had this myself. Marco, it doesn't give me pleasure to do this. Look at the picture of LRH right there. Marco, look at that picture of LRH. Marco, look at that picture of LRH. This is his policy. Look at the picture of LRH. That's it. Look forward. Okay. Turn around. We got 5 more coming.
Fuck no, man.
We got 5 more
That's enough, man.
Yes, come on, Marco. Come on.
Will you hold on to me? Let this thing go away, dude.
Marco. It's going to be, the longer it takes, the more it hurts. So turn around.
Can you see the policy?
I'll show it to you after this is done. Right now, this is the justice action. Turn around, let's get you over. Come on. Get over it. That's what we're going to do. I know it hurts. Okay, let's go.
Don't leave me right there, dude. Hit my butt.
You're going to try. Get up there.
Dude, you don't hit my butt, man.
I'm trying to get you. I offered you the power. Look forward. You want to do the paddle?
No.
Let's go. Let's get over it. I don't like doing this. All right, okay. Come in. Marco. 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 You took it like a man. Marco. You took it like a man.
I don't want you, man.
Take my hand. Marco, take my hand. Marco. I did not enjoy doing that. Please take my hand.
I want to get kicked out, dude.
You don't have a choice.
I'm going to do anything possible to get
You
kicked out.
don't have a choice. Take my hand. Okay, sit down in the chair. I said sit down in the chair. Now, I mean it. Sit down.
Don't yell at me, man.
I said sit down in the chair. Right there. Sit down in the chair. Stop.
Are you there, Lucy?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I'm not sure. People are saying that they got cut off.
Right.
So I'm not sure if this is Scientology cutting us off or what, but if you weren't able to listen to, and I apologize, we have no control over that. It is Blog Talk, but you can go on the archive and listen again if you did miss it and you want to hear it again. You can go to the archive, which will be up after the show, about sort of 5 or 10 minutes after the show ends tonight. So, Lucy, did you want to say anything?
I just, listening to that, I just have such a horrible feeling. I mean, I just can't imagine a child going through anything like that. I really can't. I know in everything there is a negative, and I think what we've heard tonight and what things that have come out in the research, it's just overwhelming to me right now. It just really is. I'm really speechless. I mean, my heart is heavy.
Wow, you haven't been able to talk a lot.
You know what? It's just, I just have such a heavy heart right now. I mean, such a sense of sadness.
Yeah. No, I do too. And usually when I get in that mode, I'm going to express it, and maybe talking it out sort of gets you through it. It does for me. And this isn't an easy topic to discuss. There are so many stories and so many things that have been written about this topic that it's truly disturbing. And, you know, originally when we set out to do the show tonight, we wanted to sort of talk about Scientology and its links to one other organization, which is called the Illuminati. You know, and there are certain links to Illuminati, but upon doing our research, we really didn't find anything really concrete other than, you know, the possibility of, you know, the logo itself for Scientology being linked to Illuminati, and maybe some of the uses of numbers that L. Ron Hubbard has used for its what they call the bridge to happiness or something like that. It's their class system that they have, and but that's about it. You know, we've heard a lot of weird stories, including the movie Eyes Wide Shut, and remember that story that we discussed, Lucy?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
go ahead.
When you go on the internet, I mean, you can find all kinds of stories, going from the most unbelievable to something that you say, oh, wow, you know, yeah, that can happen. So it's really difficult to take out what's real and what's not. I mean, because there's just so much. And I think when we first started deciding to talk about this, basically it was the connection to like Tom and Katie and the celebrity, and it felt a lot lighter than it actually was. But as we kept going, you know, on and on, it just came very apparent to me that this is something more than what we're seeing.
And a lot of it, too, that sort of enticed us to talk about Scientology was the talk and was the chatter that we found about the whole connection with black magic. And Nancy sort of touched on that a little bit when we were interviewing her, how the sort of satanic side of things truly was the foundation of Scientology. And in our research, you know, we've learned that L. Ron Hubbard dabbled in that. He, as you were talking, Lucy, and you mentioned to Nancy about the moon child, conjuring up the moon child.
Mm-hmm.
And he had worked a lot with, or was actually best friends with, Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, who, and Jack Parsons was a big NASA guy. And Aleister Crowley, of course, is, you know, the one guy who delved into or is in charge of or head of some big satanic cult. And he's the creator of tarot cards too, right? Or he created tarot cards. Aleister Crowley
had his, right. Well, he didn't create tarot cards, but he had his own deck.
Right. And some of the stories that we read too, that there's an image on one of Aleister Crowley's decks of a cross with a X in the middle. And if everyone knows the symbol for Scientology, it's the crossed out cross. And Scientology has that as their symbol. So we saw a lot of similarities between Scientology and Satanism and stuff of the black magic, that there are definitely some cross patterns in that. A lot of it.
One thing that I do have to say, okay, so from what I read, the five pointed cross is supposed to symbolize man. The 5 points. If you go back to the Da Vinci drawing where the man has the arms spread out, I forgot what it's called, but the symbolism there is supposed to be that.
Right.
That's the story that's given.
I don't know. You know, there's just so much to this topic that even just 2 hours is not enough. We can go so much more into depth. We can actually create a show just on black magic and Scientology. We can go into so many stories and create 2 hours just on abuse that has been reported by ex-Scientologists and what people have done afterwards and what they've gone through. I mean, Nancy didn't talk about, and I purposely didn't want to do it because I want people to go get her book, My Billion-Year Contract. I didn't want to talk about how she left because how she left was horrifying, and she had a child. She had a son in this organization as well, and she was married, and just how she escaped, how she left, and what she had to do to get her child, and what happened to her mentally at the end of this ordeal is it completely will boggle your mind. And even after reading her book, I still cannot comprehend how someone can go through that. And this sort of goes back to, Lucy, what you were talking about, how you couldn't understand how someone could get into it. And I just can't understand how anybody could live through it.
Yeah. And like I said, basically what we're doing here is not to say anything pro or con, but it is to put it out there for people to form their own opinions. And basically I think what we touched on is just maybe a small fraction of what this entails. I mean, this like you said, I mean, 2 hours probably wouldn't be enough. I mean, you could talk for days about it.
Right.
And I think maybe if it starts discussion, if it starts people to do some research on your own, see what you think, see what you find. I mean, honestly, right now,
and share it with us. Let us know what you've found.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is basically what we're here to help everyone open their minds and discuss. And I think what we found tonight, honestly, I can't discuss it right now because I'm still trying to absorb it. I seriously.
I agree with you.
When have you ever heard me this quiet?
I know. You chew my ear off to the point when it bleeds, and I can't believe that you're this speechless. It's amazing.
Because I'm trying to absorb this. It's just.
I'm absorbing it, but I can't believe it. I don't believe that this could happen, and maybe it's just my warped sense of reality that things like this should not exist, but it does. And just as we approach with the paranormal, we understand that there is another side, that we do cross over, and that there is life there. We have talked to spirits, we have seen spirits, but I think the concept itself, how can that be a reality? I think that still drives us, or drives me, to continue doing paranormal research because of that fact that I just can't believe that exists, that the spirit world exists. And I think it applies to this. It's there. It's in black and white right in front of me. Everything about Scientology, but I just can't believe that it is in the world that we live in.
I think what's really amazing me right now is because I want to believe in the inherent good nature of man. I really do. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that man is basically good. But when you hear things like this, it's just so shocking to me that, man can do this to each other.
One of the repetitive things that I see that's going on in the chat room right now, like Valerie and Francis are talking about, and I think Paul also has been talking about this as well, how Tom Cruise, jumping on the couch and, proclaiming his love for Katie when he was on the Oprah Winfrey Show years ago. And what I had, and I'll share this with everybody, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, but what I have found in my research is that Tom Cruise, and again, I don't know if this goes according to the whole rumor that he's gay or not, but what I had heard was that Scientology had created a list and interviewed and auditioned potential wives for Tom Cruise. And they had gone through this list of what they considered to be the sort of casting call for Tom Cruise's wife. And they went through that list and didn't find anybody. And then there was a secondary list that I don't think were auditioned or casted or whatever it was. But I think there had been sort of a length of time and a length of period where there was no hope to find a wife or a suitor for Tom Cruise. And I think until he... Go ahead.
Anthony, I think how the story was told is that they had gone through a list of actresses who was involved in Scientology. And when they had gone through their list, I guess it was that they did not find anyone who was suitable within Scientology. So at that point,
correct.
They went outside, and they had a short list, and Katie was on that list. And I believe whoever was doing this was in charge of the auditions. They finally decided that Katie was the person who would fit the bill. And, you know, if you think about it, too, I mean, Katie is 17 years younger than Tom. So, of course, you've got a young girl who, you know, she's in the beginning of her career. You know, she's never been married, doesn't have a family. And I guess from what I read, Katie was totally fascinated with Tom to begin with. So here you go, young girl, you know, the biggest movie star in the world, now all of a sudden is courting you. Of course, that's an overwhelming thing to a young girl who is just starting her career. She wants to be an actress. She doesn't have, you know, the stature that this person is, and now all of a sudden he's courting you and he wants to be your wife. To her, I mean, this had to be like a fairy tale.
Right, and she accepted, and I guess he just, you know, thought it was never going to happen, and Katie finally said, you know, yes to him, and he just exploded on the Oprah Winfrey Show because he was just so excited that he actually was able to find someone, recruit someone into Scientology, and then to fall in love, or supposedly fall in love with someone, and know that there was this future now that he could have. And I think that sort of explains his exuberance on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Well, one thing I did find kind of curious to me was it seemed like a lot of the celebrities and people that were involved, you know, that are involved in this are ex-Catholics. I know that there are other people that are involved in other religions and that, but I just found it kind of unusual. There seemed to be a high number of people that were ex-Catholic that became involved in this. Now, whether this goes back to the disillusionment with the Catholic Church, you know, I just found that just kind of interesting. Now, it could be because I'm Catholic, you know, that all of a sudden I just happen to notice this and maybe not paid attention to other people of other denominations. But it just kind of struck me that a lot of these people that are involved are ex-Catholic.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think, you know, there has been an ongoing issue with Catholicism and, you know, the Catholic Church, and the running issues that they have going on with the scandals that have been going, that it sort of disillusioned a lot of its parishioners, and they looked elsewhere. And again, it's, you know, as soon as they noticed what was going on in their own church, they turned around, and Scientology is right there in their face to capture them and say, you know what, we don't have that over here.
It's not just Scientology. I mean, it's other. I mean, you know, you look at Madonna. I mean, she was Catholic, and she turned to the Kabbalah. So, I mean, you know, I think it seems like with that disillusionment with the church makes Catholics, the ex-Catholics or the Catholics that are disillusioned with what's going on, prime targets for any thing.
Right, and especially if they're marketing in a way that is not a religion, or is, quote unquote a religion, but it's more of a self-help. If they've got
right.
that.
Here's the solution.
Right. Here's how we can help you.
I don't know. I'm still.
Yeah.
I'm
all right,
sorry.
Why don't we just get on to a lighter side
something
of the
familiar.
night.
Yeah, let's go back to something very familiar. And I'd like to talk about the Paranormal Review Fan of the Week. This week, our fan comes all the way from Denmark, and it's Henrik Mas Norgard Christensen. Henrik is a fan. He's always posting. He listens to the show. I mean, when we send out the invites, Henrik is always there. A little bit about Henrik: he likes AC/DC, likes the Dead Kennedys, he likes Ghost Adventures, and he's a gamer. He likes Call of Duty and Medal of Honor. He likes the paranormal, and of course, he likes Paranormal Review Radio.
Oh, he's a gamer. He's your good friend, huh?
Yeah, I'm ready for an RPG right now, Nice little fantasy world where I can just go back into and be safe.
Well, congratulations, Henrik.
Thank you, Henrik, for being such a loyal fan. Well, I guess that's it. What an eye-opener. I did not know what to expect when we started looking at this subject. And I honestly have to say that I've learned a lot. I have learned that one needs to keep an open mind when you're looking at a new way of thinking. But you also have to listen to your heart. Faith is a powerful thing. But you know what? Take your time when you feel the need to make a change. If something doesn't feel right, it just might not be. We do want to thank Nancy Manny for sharing her story with us. She is an absolutely courageous woman. Anthony, it was another amazing show. I have learned so much from doing the show with you. Thank you. I want to thank all of you who listen to us every week, who post and comment on our Facebook page. Your support means so much to us. So in exchange for the joy that you bring us, we'd like to give you a gift. Next week, Mr. David Beck is going to join us. Now, David is a gifted psychic medium. He's a certified life coach and a public motivational speaker. He will be joining us next Friday night to talk about life, his unique ability of tapping into and connecting with the whisper of the divine energy, and to share his positive love and light with you. David will be doing readings for callers, so make sure that you join us and call the show. So until next Friday, dear friends, have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.